So this is the 2022 M2 11-inch iPad Pro, and I recently upgraded this about 2 months ago from my 10.5-inch iPad Pro, which was 5 years old. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about my experience with the iPad Pro, how I use it, and what they've done in the latest version of the iPad Pro. So let's check it out. There's not much difference in this one compared to the previous one, which was the M1 11-inch iPad Pro. And they've done a couple of things. Let me just quickly get through them. So the first one is that the pen has a hover feature. As I hover over different icons, you can see that I'm not really touching the screen, but they're still interacting with me. This is really useful if you are an artist or doing any kind of artwork. So if you're using something like Procreate, you will see a little representation of what you're going to paint before you paint it. Super useful if you're an artist. Probably makes sense to get the M2 version because this one has that hover feature, which is really nice to have. And compared to my previous 10.5-inch iPad Pro, this one is more responsive with the second generation Apple Pencil. Of course, I'm switching iPads after 5 years. There are going to be differences like that, but this second generation iPad Pencil makes so much more sense than the previous one. The way that the previous one used to charge with Lightning was ridiculous. Let's quickly talk about the form factor. I mean, this has been the same form factor for iPads for the last 4 years. I love the design, the symmetrical bezels all around. Since this is the iPad Pro, it's got Face ID and it's also got the 120Hz display. It's one of the main reasons I got the iPad 11-inch Pro. I'm not really an iPad power user. I don't really do much productivity stuff on the iPad, but I really wanted to have the 120Hz because I was so used to it with the 10.5-inch iPad. Once you get used to the 120Hz, it's kind of hard to go back. But apart from that, I would recommend most people to go with the iPad Air. It's got the M1 processor, very similar in looks and design. This one has 11-inch screen, that one has a 10.9-inch screen. You can barely tell the difference. But yes, this one does have the 120Hz display, which makes the whole user interface a lot more fluid and it makes it feel a little bit faster than the other iPads. It's quite ridiculous that this iPad actually has more horsepower than my M1 MacBook Air. They have very similar processors. This one has the latest generation M2, and I did do some benchmarks on it, and this one's JavaScript performance comes to, let's say, 1.5. This one's 1.7, 10 to 15% more in single core performance compared to my MacBook Air and compared to my Mac Studio over here. So yeah, definitely an amazing performer. This one comes standard with 8 gigs of RAM as well. So multitasking on this is absolutely amazing. We've got quad speakers on this thing. They sound amazing. A little bit better than my MacBook Air over there, even though that one is double the size of this thing. I mean, this one's 11-inch iPad and still sounds fantastic. So as a media consumption device, probably doesn't get much better than this except for the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, which also has a better display. It's got the XDR display, so it's got more dynamic range, better black levels and localized dimming, which this one doesn't have. But apart from that, this is the top of the end iPad that you can get right now. How is it in terms of performance? Well, if you're talking about gaming, this thing is an absolute beast. Let me just show you some Genshin Impact over here. This right now is running at high graphics at 120 frames a second. It's not skipping a beat. I mean, this is a really challenging game considering it's a mobile platform, it's an iPad, but this is one of the best portable gaming experiences that you can have right now. Unfortunately, they don't really have the amazing game selection like a Nintendo Switch might, but you know, if you're an iPad gamer, I mean, it's really fantastic to play on the M2 iPad Pro because you've got plenty of performance, you've got the RAM as well as the beautiful display over here. One of the best things about the new iPads is they have USB-C and Thunderbolt as standard on this 11-inch iPad Pro. So that means I can connect my high-speed Sabrent Rocket SSD into this thing and it works like a champ. You can use any USB-C hub as well, or use a Thunderbolt display, which I'll show you guys in a bit, to make this a dual screen experience, which is pretty amazing, which we didn't really have with the previous iPads, or it wasn't as seamless as it is with this one. I just plugged in my Sabrent Rocket SSD over here and it just pops up on the iPad, and it makes it so much easier to transfer data this way, or if you have a bunch of movies on your hard disk and you just want to watch them on the iPad, You don't really need to get a very high-end iPad with lots of memory anymore. Most of the new iPads have the USB-C, but it's my first experience with with the iPad, and here you can see how quickly and smoothly it plays. These are some clips from my podcast Startup Hustle Middle East, and everything just works amazingly well. One of the big advantages of having something like this with the M2 processor is that you can actually do video editing on this. So I'm just opening DaVinci Resolve over here, and we've got a full video editing experience over here. So I can import media, go to my Final Cut. Let's see, we got some clips from my podcast, and you can see my clip over here, and I can just drag it into my timeline, and I can scrub through over here super smooth. Like, this thing is amazing. This over here is a 4K clip shot on a Sony A7C, and it's buttery smooth over here. So in terms of performance, this thing is mind-blowing. I can add some effects over here as well, and do some basic editing. Super simple to do it on the go. So you can see just how smooth that is. It is absolutely amazing, especially editing in 120 Hertz on this iPad. It feels really nice. I do wish now that I did have the MacBook Pro as my editing machine, or I had a 120 Hertz monitor, because this definitely feels a lot nicer to edit on. Even though the video is being recorded at 24 frames a second, like, this is sick. Now the iPad's become super versatile over time, and like, I have my PS5 controller set up with this thing. It works amazingly well as a remote desktop application. So here you can see I'm playing NBA 2K 2023 Apple Arcade. It's got full controller support, and you can play these games with your PlayStation 5 controller, PlayStation 4 controller, Xbox controller. iPads come a huge way in terms of gaming performance and having support for controllers. And another really cool feature I love is being able to play PlayStation Remote Play using this thing. So this is pretty much my portable PS5 right now. So here you can see I'm playing PlayStation 5 on my iPad Pro, and the experience is actually pretty amazing. I'm actually playing Jedi Survivor over here right now, and this experience is pretty amazing because the screen is fantastic as well. Other amazing thing that the new iPad lets me do is continuity with my MacBook Air. So often I'm carrying both these devices with me. There are two ways that I can use my MacBook Air with my iPad. One is that when both of them are open and next to each other like this, I can just drag my mouse over, and now I can control my iPad with my MacBook Air, which is absolutely amazing. It makes it so much easier when you want to, like, say, have YouTube playing over here. I'm looking at a tutorial while I'm working on something else over here. It makes it really simple to have like that dual screen experience. Or sometimes I'll just have my email open while I'm looking into some other work over here. So it gives me a really nice dual screen experience. Of course, I can continue to use touch whenever I want, but just having this seamless mousing and keyboard experience. Of course, I can use my keyboard over here as well to, like, search a website. So say I go to jarkar.com, and I've got my full iPad experience over here. So sometimes I just keep it back there. In this current mode, both of them are using separate operating systems. This one's running iPad OS, this is running Mac OS, and I'm just using the mouse and keyboard input seamlessly between the two of them. I find this amazing. It just works like magic. The other way you can use both of these devices together is to use screen mirroring. So I can just go on my MacBook and put screen mirroring mode on. And now I've got a full second desktop for my Mac over here, and I can just use them seamlessly. So this is really cool. Like, say I'm video editing on the go and I want a dual screen setup. I want all my clips on this side and I want my timeline on this side. This makes it super easy, especially when I'm traveling, to have a dual screen setup over here. If I'm working on the go, having two displays, I'm so used to having a multi-monitor setup that this just makes it so much nicer to use it. So I quite often use my iPad as a secondary display just to do that. And it's one of the features that you get kind of in the newer iPads and it doesn't do it on the older iPads. You have to use weird cables and weird software to do it. With the newer ones, you get everything inbuilt. Another thing I really love about this experience of using the iPad as well as the MacBook is that it actually gives you all the functionality of the previous generation MacBook Pro touch bar right down here. So you've got shortcuts. So say I'm here on the clip, so I can just use these buttons to like trim the clip, like run little shortcuts, run a loop if I need to. So it's really cool, like you get all this extra functionality over here. Sometimes I just use it with my Mac Studio as well in this way, just so that I can use the shortcuts at the bottom. It makes it so much nicer in terms of, you know, like having quick action features and things like that. Now let's check out a new feature that they have in the new iPads. This comes with the M1 iPad and the new M2 iPad. They've got something new called Stage Manager. And because these new iPads have extra RAM and the extra processing power, what you can do is you can actually open multiple windows. Like this is pretty much like desktop style capabilities on your iPad. You can have up to 3 windows open. At the same time, it'll intelligently switch between them, and you can always slide over and see the rest of your open apps. It's going to give me up to 3. At the same time, I can move these around and I can have a very desktop-like experience over here. So if you are an iPad power user, this thing is pretty cool, but there's a step above this as well. Let's move over to my computer over here. The new iPads also support dual monitor displays. So let's plug this into my 32-inch LG 4K monitor over here, which I use, and by default is going to give you a mirrored display. But if you go into the settings and under display, you'll be able to see the extra display, and you can go into arrangement and turn off mirrored displays, and now you get 2 beautiful displays over here to work on, and it gives you a very desktop-like experience. Now I'm using my continuity from my Mac Studio, which is running on these 2 other monitors, along with my iPad in dual display mode over here. And this whole integration between all of Apple's products is just mind-blowing. When you run it like this, it's going to go into Stage Manager mode, so you can open multiple applications over here and you know, have them all paired together. It supports again up to 4. It feels almost like running full-fledged macOS, and this is pretty much as close as it gets to running you know, desktop kind of environment with your iPad. And it's quite nice, I must say. It still doesn't quite live up to a full desktop operating system, but they're getting very, very close to it right now. For me, it's mostly a media consumption device as well as an accessory to my Mac. I use it as a secondary display. I use it sometimes for its cool features. Getting pen input directly into my Mac is amazing with the iPad. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with it. It's still not quite up to being a, you know, like the only computer I would use. Sometimes Apple tries to push this as like the only computer that you need. Maybe for quite a few people out there, I'd say maybe 80% of the population, this could be a full computer and serve, you know, 99% of your needs. But since I'm a bit more of a power user, it doesn't quite cut it for me right now as being the only machine. But the horsepower is here. Every year, Apple is inching closer and closer to making this a full computing experience. So anyway, guys, if you like this video, hit that like button, leave me a comment, subscribe to watch more videos like this, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.